Hello YouTubers and welcome to Novus Talks with me, your host Novus Scorpius. And I haven't really talked a lot about the Switch Pro rumors since they've been coming out, mostly because I've never believed in any of them. For the most part they've been baseless to me. And the fact that Nintendo has come out every single year since 2017 to say that they're sticking with the current hardware has proved definitively to me up until this point that they weren't going to be making a Switch Pro. It wasn't something they were considering. Even with the Bloomberg report that came out, I think last week, I didn't believe it, I didn't buy it. Nintendo clearly said multiple times they're focused on current hardware. And plus, Switch sales are doing so well that why would you risk introducing a new console when it could damage current sales, especially if they want to outsell the Wii? That was how I was viewing it, and it just made perfect sense. People kept twisting Nintendo's words and saying that it actually was proof of a Switch Pro or whatever, but I never believed it. That's why I've never done any videos on it, and if I have done videos on a Switch Pro, I've only talked about it once or twice, because it's not worth talking about, I feel. Until now, for the first time ever, we've found something that probably means we're getting a Switch Pro. So there's a worldwide shortage of silicon at the moment, and as a result, Nvidia are stopping production on the Tegra X1 chip, which is what's used to power the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch Lite. They're going to be ceasing manufacturing of that this year, which means by the end of the year, Nintendo will no longer be manufacturing the current Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch Lite. It won't be possible. The chip won't be there. I'm sure obviously they'll stack up on a couple of million of them to keep making out Switches for the next 2 years or so, but they can't manufacture beyond that point. So what happens? If their console can't be manufactured anymore, what happens? They're not moving on to the next console for another 3 to 4 years at the earliest. So Switch Pro? When you put this in conjunction with the Bloomberg report, suddenly it actually makes sense. The report claimed that Nintendo would be manufacturing a Switch Pro in July of this year and would get ready to show and reveal at the holidays. Suddenly this makes too much sense. With the normal Switch going out of production very soon, the Switch Pro is going to take the place of the Switch and the Switch Lite. And at the end of the year, it makes perfect sense as well, because by the end of the year, the Tegra X1 won't be manufactured anymore, which means Nintendo is going to have to seek stronger hardware for their new system. And obviously they have to keep the Switch sales going, so Switch Pro makes sense. And it also lines up with what I said previously about Breath of the Wild 2 coming out March of next year. I never believed it would come out for a Switch Pro, I never believed the Switch Pro was a thing, but suddenly this makes sense. I'm a firm believer Breath of the Wild is a March 2022 game. Maybe the Switch Pro comes out in March, and Breath of the Wild 2 is a launch title 5 years after the original Breath of the Wild. It actually makes a lot of sense, and I'm flabbergasted, honestly. I still haven't really fully processed the full impact of what this means for Nintendo's business, and I don't really know how I feel about it, honestly. The fact that the current Switch that I own and that 80 other million people own is going to be kind of rare in a couple of years, and most people who are buying a new Switch will be buying an upgraded model is really weird. As long as, and they won't do this, but as long as first party games aren't exclusive, or at least major first party games aren't exclusive, then I'm okay with it. As long as I can play Breath of the Wild and Metroid Prime 4 on my regular Switch, I'm happy with it, whatever about the Pro. But as I said before, I'm not going to buy a Switch Pro. I have no interest in it unless not only is there a significant difference, but there's a difference that warrants the price for me, because I don't really care that much about specs. I'm not tech savvy, so half the time if there's issues with the pixels and frame rate, I won't even notice it. That's how blind I am to it. So only in a few cases, except like Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, it was very noticeable, but for the most part, that goes right over my head. So a Switch Pro means absolutely nothing to me. unless there's something really cool and gimmicky about it that is a must-have, or if there's a certain game that's exclusive about it. The reports and stuff were all talking about how Samsung is giving Nintendo OLED screens for it, and I know nothing at all about tech, so this stuff means nothing to me, as I said, so I'm not even going to try and pretend like I know anything or what this means or what I expect from the Switch Pro. When a reveal comes, because I feel like at this point now it's certain. When this happens, obviously I'll be doing a reaction, I'll give my thoughts on it, and maybe, probably not, but maybe I'll get it, who knows, we'll see. But it's just crazy to me we've gotten to this point, and maybe Nintendo knew all along the Tegra was going away, and maybe they were planning for this, and that's why these rumors have been out there. It's possible. I mean, all of the rumors about the original Nintendo Switch came out true. Every single one of them was 100% true in the end, so it's possible the Switch Pro rumors turn out 100% true as well, and if they are, okay, great, I'll take back my word, I'll have been wrong at that point. But what about the Switch Lite? You can replace the Nintendo Switch, that's fine, but the whole point of the Switch Lite was to make a cheaper device, but with less features, naturally, as a result of it being cheaper. Are they going to get rid of that? I don't know. I mean, it depends really on how the sales of the Switch Lite have been doing. I haven't been paying attention to them, but from what I've heard, they haven't been exactly to the standard Nintendo was expecting. And I'm sure the Nintendo Switch Lite sold a hell of a lot of copies. In fact, I would bet money it did. But I don't know, it definitely wasn't as gangbuster selling as the proper Nintendo Switch. And I don't know if Nintendo's going to consider worth updating the Switch Lite, like making a Switch Lite Pro or whatever the hell they call it. Maybe they just abandoned that idea. I don't know. Or maybe they continue it going because it's cheaper and they'll just make a Pro that works the exact same. They'll make the Switch Pro that's the exact same as the Switch Lite, just with the upgraded specs and stuff. That's probably what they'll do. I'm not going to pretend like I have any idea, but who knows? As I said, we'll see. Since the very beginning, as I keep bringing up, I've been against the idea of the Nintendo Switch Pro because it was going to damage current Switch sales. Now that we're on track to pass out the Wii within the next 2 years, I really want Nintendo to just keep going with the current hardware, but if Tegra X1 isn't a thing, then they have no choice, and the Switch Pro has to exist, otherwise Nintendo doesn't exist. So I mean, it is whatever, but on the bright side, it will keep the Switch going. Having the Switch last 5 years and then having the Switch Pro last 5 years actually makes a lot of sense at this point, because Nintendo really want the Switch to last 10 years, so half the life being an updated model, that makes sense. I always believed that if a Pro was coming, it would be 2022 maybe. They'd milk the current Switch for as long as possible, and maybe when sales start to go down is when they release another model. But Kimishima's recent comments, along with this discovery, seem to indicate that Nintendo is going to keep going with a Pro. Even though Switch sales are only going up, they want to keep the momentum going. They want to replicate what Sony did with the PlayStation 4, because Nintendo's strategy in the past has been to wait until sales drop before releasing new hardware. That's had a lot more downs than ups for them, so I don't know, I think we're going into a whole other territory here, but if it gives the Switch the means to last another 5 years, then that's awesome, you know, more life for the Switch, that's only good, and it'll make it feel fresh, you know, because we're not going to get a brand new console until 2027 maybe, so having a Pro is definitely going to tie us over, and it's going to feel more up to date, it's not going to feel outdated, and it's going to give the people who are crying for this thing a reason to own a Switch, and it's going to give people, I guess, more faith in Nintendo and their hardware and their sales and all of that. And plus, hey, it gives them more time for more games. We don't have to worry about Metroid Prime 4 coming out at the very last year of the console like it did in the Super Nintendo, because if the Switch lasts 10 years, should be more than enough time for them to get the game out at some point. But yeah, those are just my thoughts and opinions on this discovery. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. How do you feel about the Switch Pro? Have you believed any of the rumors up to this point? Do you think the discontinuation of the Tegra X1 means we're finally getting a Pro? What do you think Nintendo's going to do about the situation of not producing standard Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch Lite models? I want to hear everything you have to say down in the comment section below. And yeah, with that all said, thank you all for watching and please subscribe. Novus Corvius out.